Hello everybody, welcome to Paramedic Care 1. I'm Charlie Swearingen. I'm going to be your instructor for this course at OSU OKC in their paramedic program. Um, Sorry this is coming out late, but I basically just picked this job up. I've been friends with Justin Hunter, the program director, for quite some time, almost 10 years, and asked me recently to join the team, and here we are. So trying to get everything done so that you guys have what you need to get started. This is kind of a rudimentary type of setup here. I mean, I got earphones in, a microphone. I'm going to be using my iPad, as you'll see. Hopefully, this figure of me is in some box somewhere else, so you don't have to see, like the scary look to the people used to put the flashlights at, campsites. So sometimes jokes don't work, but that's okay. We're going to go with it. But I'd like to welcome you, ultimately. I'll tell you a little bit about myself here shortly. I do have a bio up online already, and the shortest version is I've been a paramedic since 2003 in EMS 2000. Started in paramedic school. I was exposed to the helicopter, critical care helicopter at the med school that I was attending paramedic school at, and I earned a ride on that helicopter, a clinical, and fell in love with it and knew I wanted to be those guys who walked in the halls and people got out of their way. They always had everything together, and they saved patients' lives quick, fast, and got them off to where they needed to be. So pretty excited about helping you get to wherever you might want to be with paramedicine. And the first step, of course, is Paramedic Care 1. So I couldn't be more honored to help usher you into the field that I so incredibly love. And yeah, so with that, let's get to it. So here's your course and syllabus and schedule. You'll notice there's so much. This is a huge syllabus. There's a lot of college syllabi out there that have 2 or 3 pages. This isn't that. This is the full meal deal. 40 plus pages almost in this syllabus, but it's everything you need to know to make sure that you're ready to go and you have what you need, especially not only for this semester but for the following semesters. The following semesters, you'll have to go through and build off. You will have to build off what we learned here. So we got to start and get it going. So you'll see here we have OSU OKC EMS programs accredited by the Commission of Accreditation of Allied Health Education Programs upon recommendation of the Committee on Accreditation of Educational Programs for the Emergency Medical Services Professions, or COAMPS. So what this means is this whole program has gone through a whole rigorous process to make sure that it's established, it's done the right way, it's run the right way, that it continues to improve and be over and over and over to prove itself as a successful program, and that it's doing the right things based on the people who accredit different EMS agencies or EMS educational agencies. So it's pretty cool. Further that along, we have CAA-HEP, and here we have, of course, and that's what the Commission of Accreditation of Allied Health Education Programs is. CAHEP, I believe, is the acronym name. The whole goal here is to educate students. So the mission statement for OSU OKC EMS program is to educate students in the profession of paramedicine, thereby enabling them to provide the highest level of pre-hospital care, professionalism, and leadership. And I want to really highlight a couple things here. The professionalism. There's so much pride in what you do that should come out in a certain way. What we do at this program and as paramedics, we have to establish professionalism, and it's such a big deal to this program, to Justin Hunter, to all the faculty. To be able to do this is a privilege, and with that privilege comes the responsibility of doing it the right way. Being professional is something that we will drill and instill into you until we can't say it any other way, and then we'll just repeat it all because it's so important that you understand those things. We have to be leaders. Ultimately, we have to be leaders in what we do so that we can make the right choices, continue our education, to do everything that we need to make sure that we're getting our patients in the right direction. But that comes with professionalism, leadership, and of course the highest level of pre-hospital care. We have to make sure that we train you guys to do everything right to a degree that you know why you're doing what you're doing because of this reason, and then you're going to go back and reassess based on the data that you get from your patient. It's got to be the highest level. It's got to be professionalism. It's got to be professional, and it also has to. You have to be a leader, and those are important. So that's our mission statement. Very, very important that we understand. The mission statement and what that means. All right, here's our patch. Very cool, emblem that we'll wear on your uniform. Pretty stellar there. When we come to this next page, page 3 here, 3 very important sets of information. Our core values, like we just went over our mission statement, our core values, program goals, and assessed program outcomes. So these are some things that are very important that are central to what we're trying to accomplish in the program. The core values include integrity. So this is consistently being honest and trustworthy, right? Pretty simple. I mean, integrity is that you are who you are and you hold, essentially, that you don't waver from the values that you believe. Compassion. In this job, you're going to people's worst day. You have to be compassionate to your patients so that you're not some jerk just slinging them in an ambulance and taking them to where they want to go. You're actually caring about what's going on with them. A lot of times, just being polite can get you so much patient information, help from bystanders, help from other folks on scene. Being compassionate, not only to your patients, but everybody around you. Again, that's the professionalism piece. That can earn you so much when it comes to resources that you're going to need to be able to take care of your patient. And then, of course, making your patient feel better ultimately. Accountability. You have to be accountable for your actions. Educationally, that really comes down to you're going to have to do all the skills. You're going to have to do all of the homework. You're going to have to pass the exams. You have to basically learn and then prove that you've learned it over and over and over and be accountable to that. You have to do the skills so that you learn the skills so you can prove that you can do those skills over and over and over. You're accountable for that. And then your behavior, how you act, that professionalism that we want to instill in you, that's going to be important, and you're going to have to be able to do that as well. And so accountability is such a huge important thing for us. And maintain that responsibility for your actions and your mistakes. It's hard. You're going to fail. You're going to fail at certain points. Fail with a small f. You're going to fail. That's okay to fail. It's completely okay to fail. What we have to worry about is what we do with that failure. And little failures are really just ways to help us identify what direction we should be going next time. That's all a failure is. So if we take that into if we believe that, then when you make a failure, don't think it's like this worst thing in the world. Use it, learn from it, so it doesn't happen again. An expert is only somebody that knows all the different ways to fail in a field. Therefore, they know how to tiptoe around those failures so that they don't fail when they do a skill or they do a procedure or some type of work in a certain field. They know all the pitfalls. They can avoid them, right? So don't be afraid to fail. But we're going to be accountable for that. So it's hard to do. It's hard to admit failure, but you've got to figure out a way to strip that from yourself a little bit and realize that we are going to have failures, and that's okay. What do we do with it? That's the most important part. Respect. You have to be polite and behave in a manner that brings credit to our profession. Okay, so very, very important that you give respect to get respect. And so we'll start with professionalism. That's a whole big thing with professionalism, is that respect piece. You might not like the people you work with. You might not like the people you're on scene with. But a respect can get you a long way, and as far as working together, getting things done, getting resources so that you get your patient in the right spot. Treating your patient with respect is a professional action that we need to be doing. Empathy. The big thing here is calm, compassionate, and helpful demeanor towards those in need. You might not know what they're experiencing, but so that while we might not be able to have true empathy, that doesn't mean you can't empathize for somebody by trying to put yourself in their place, trying to think, okay, how would I feel if I was that way, and then therefore, how would I want to be treated? So super important that we pay attention to that. We need to be empathetic. Sympathy is like, oh, poor them. Empathy is like, I wonder how they're feeling, because I'm going to be treating them. Therefore, I need to be thinking about those things that they're feeling so that I can best care for them. So very important to have empathy. Program goals. So our program goals here, first one, to prepare competent entry-level paramedics in the cognitive, which is knowledge, psychomotor, which is skills, and the affective, which is the behavior, learning domains, with or without exit points at the advanced emergency medical technician or emergency medical technician and or emergency medical responder level. So basically we want to get you to the level of paramedic. With the way we do that is we go through a lot of cognitive objectives, things that you learn that you can regurgitate. You can show us on tests, like, oh, I can do this. I understand why 1 + 1 = 2. I can show you that. The skill part would be, why did you use that, and show us in a skill like something that psychomotor, right, that you use with your hands. And then the affective is how you behave during that. You're going to be measured on all kinds of objectives, but they all fall into one of these three categories: cognitive, psychomotor, and affective. And simply, that's cognitive. That's the, what knowledge can you retain and show us. The skills show us you can do the particular skill. You can take it from here and put it into your hand. And then, of course, the behavior, how you act while you're doing it. And all that is what's needed. We have to assess all those things so that we can best evaluate you as an entry-level paramedic, which is what that first bullet's about. Now, a lot of your college classes, they're only going to do cognitive. They're not going to test you don't have a lab where you have to do a skill. Some do, but most college classes are just going to only assess your cognitive. We assess all three because it's so important to be able to do that, and it's so integral into being a good, competent, professional paramedic. All right, that second bullet point. Maintain first-time pass rates on the National Registry ALS cognitive and psychomotor exams above 90%. We're going to put you through the ringer. This isn't an easy program. It's a tough program, but it's worth it. And we show that people are successful here, and we want to make sure we maintain that 90%. That's one of our program goals. So we'll work you hard, and you're going to have to work hard to graduate. But once you graduate, you were going to be in a position where you're going to have a really good, solid chance to take and pass your cognitive and psychomotor skills on the National Registry exam. Maintain a retention rate greater than 70%. So as you come in, we want to keep all of you. And just the way that always math happens, some people have things that happen, some people don't like it, and some people have problems that they need to take a step back and get figured out. We want to keep 70% of you. That's kind of a goal that we wanted, because we don't want to just people run off. We have you here. We want to try to push you through and make sure that you have everything you need to be successful so that you stay and we retain you. That's the retention piece. All right. The assessed program outcomes, the big 10,000-foot view is we want here to have we want to make sure that you can interpret basic arrhythmias and basic 12-lead ECG. Okay, all the heart rhythms, we want to make sure you can do that. Understand the pharmacodynamics and pharmacokinetics of pre-hospital emergency medications. You're going to have a lot of medications you're going to have to be at your disposal. You're going to have to know how they work, how the body breaks them down, and that's essentially pharmacokinetics. And then the pharmacodynamics is how that medicine actually works to fix your patient, or to fix is a bad word, to treat your patient, right? If their blood pressure is low, we want to give a medicine that increases their blood pressure. Maybe that's just fluid. Maybe that's a vasopressor. You'll learn those. We want to know why we're giving the medicine, what happens, what does the body do to it, and then what happens when it's in the body, and then how we measure it. And so we'll have to make sure you know that. Discuss essential concepts of crew resource management. Very, very important that we understand that we are not an island. We will most likely Always have a team, even if it's just one or two of you, or one other person or two other people. You'll always be working in a team to some degree. And we need to be able to use the resources that are at our disposal. Incredibly important that we use the right resources with the right situation and go through that whole cascade and make sure that we're doing the right thing. Successfully demonstrate management of the airway in an emergent patient. ABCs. A comes first, airway. We need to make sure it's one of the people die too often because they just quit breathing or there wasn't air going down. Simply, especially kids, if you breathe for them a tiny bit, establish an airway, that keeps them alive for much longer than if you hadn't have done that one simple maneuver. So airway is an important thing. Demonstrate the ability to function as a paramedic team leader in an emergency setting. And that's the one that might seem vague, but if a paramedic comes to you in any situation that you have, you better hope that they can handle any situation. And so that's what the last bullet is, making sure that you can handle those. Okay, next page 4 here. This is essentially how you get in contact with me and all of the things that you're going to need. These are the basics. So I'm your instructor, Charles Swearingen. Like I said, I've been a paramedic for over 15 years, almost my 16th year, I believe. I've been an educator for about 15 or 14 years. I actually own my own company. I do this all over the world, teaching critical care folks. I've been in primary paramedic programs scattered around here and there throughout the last 14 years. I'm also a bilateral amputee, so a little sidebar, see if you're paying attention. Bilateral amputee, below the knee. I am on the U.S. Paralympic volleyball team, where I'm actually recording this while we're at a national team training camp. Of course, it's nighttime, and that's why I don't have the great acoustics here. So if it's really bad, then I'll probably reshoot this when I have first opportunity I get. But I'm going the next 3 weeks to go compete at the Pan Am Games in Lima, Peru. So that's why you'll be answering questions. You'll get questions answered from somebody here pretty soon, other than me for a couple weeks. But nonetheless, I'll still be in contact with you guys while I'm over there. The big thing is that my office, I'm actually going to be off-site. So while the Public Safety Training Center, but mostly online, is how I'm going to be communicating with you guys. On your 5 lab days, I will be there. I think 95%. I think I missed maybe one, but we'll work that out. The big idea so my phone number here is 601-953-9116. That's my cell number. Take home points there is don't text me on the phone. That's kind of an inappropriate student to teacher thing, and I've always kind of avoided that. I want you to be able to get in contact with me. So my email, cfswear@osukc.edu, is how you can get there. If that one doesn't work, because sometimes things happen, then try cfswear at okstate.edu. I think those go to the same spot, but just in case. My office hours for this semester are generally going to be 7 a.m. to noon, Monday and Tuesday. If you need me, you can always email me. I will answer your emails within 24 hours. If you can't get a hold of me within a 48-hour rule, so if I don't respond within 48 hours from email, then you can call me on the phone. If you don't get a response within 24 hours after that, then you can bump it up and either call the program director or one of the other instructors and make sure something, what's going on there. See why I'm not answering your call. Hopefully I'm not, in a ditch somewhere or something. So this is a hybrid course, so the class meetings are going to be majority online. On-campus times and dates included in the schedule at the end of the syllabus. As just a heads up for there will be labs. This may or may not be your exact dates, but we'll have those at the bottom of the syllabus because I have 2 sections, and this might be in a different year. So These might not be your specific labs, but then again they might. So pay attention at the end of the lab lecture, or at the end of this syllabus. You'll have all that spelled out for your specific class. The textbook for this is Brady Paramedic Care set, that 5-volume set from Brady with My Brady Lab. So you'll need, most likely just for this course, the first volume of that My Brady 5-volume set, so volume 1, and with logging on to the My Brady Lab. The prerequisites, you'll have to always be responsible for your own prerequisites and make sure you're taking the right classes. EMSP 1148 is the main one, and current or pending Oklahoma EMT license. You got to make sure you have your license. A complete updated student file in the EMS office, and a current license required for completion of this course. So make sure we get that done and to us. A co-requisite is biology 1515. Next in this course is, there you go, take paramedic care 2. So that's once we get done with this, we're moving on to that. And it's your responsibility to know those prerequisites. All right, section 1. It was all a lot of the basics. Now we're going to get into some policy of what's of the school, so you know a little bit of what to expect. Here we have the makeup policy. So late work may be accepted for reduced credit, but you have to have it within 5 days, right? So that's a big thing here. It's got to be within 5 days. So really important that if you're late, you do get it to me. I can't help you if you don't email me and let me know, hey, I got this problem, this stuff going on. We all have issues. Totally get it. But you got to let me know. The earlier you let me know, the more resources that I can, or the more power and resources that I'll have to help you. If you wait to the last minute, if it's the 5th day and at 11 at night and you're trying to get hold of me, I'm not going to be able to take that. So the more you talk to me, the more I can help you. We want to help you. Reach out to us, use us. We're your resource. You're paying the school to take these courses. We want to be here and help you succeed. We love what we do. We want you to love what you do. So you can't do that until you get through these courses. Please always reach out. Administrative withdrawal policy. Attendance, ongoing academic engagement has been proven to be a key factor in academic success. The OSU OKC community is in support of all faculty efforts to ensure that students in their courses are attending course meetings and are participating in the required course activities. That means that I have responsibility to make sure that you're there. If I see that you're missing too much, then you're going to start getting emails from me and sending you to a resource on campus to see what's going on, how we can fix it. If you are going to withdraw, is effective for all students enrolled in courses of any length. Students who do not comply with the written syllabus policy may be administrative, so we can pull you out of the course if you don't meet the policy. Be very familiar with that policy. Click on it, live it, love it, learn it, and reach out if you have any questions. General education goals statement. Here, the students will have accomplished one of the 5 following outcomes. 1, critical thinking. The world doesn't hand you a test question. Okay, a test question is made up of a bunch of clues jammed together and 4 options, and you have to choose the best one. The answer's in front of you. You have a 1 in 4 chance of making it, even if you don't know anything about it. That said, that doesn't happen in life. Life throws you an almost infinite amount of information, data points, not just a handful. Not just 4, an infinite amount almost. And you have to filter through all the stuff that's not important and find the stuff that is, so that you can make the right choice and treat your patient. We got to have that critical thinking there. So, and you can read here a little bit more into critical thinking. You need to be able to communicate effectively. One of the most main important pieces to this end is because you're treating a patient, you're giving them medicines, you're giving them therapies. You need to, once you have figured out what's going on, or maybe, and so it's completely okay sometimes to not know exactly what's going on. We can always treat ABCs, but you need to be able to effectively communicate that to others. That communication is in the form of verbal, as well as, we can even get into nonverbal and written documentation. All this has a lot to do with being an effective communicator. So a little bit more on that you can look up. Computer proficiency. It's the world we live in. It's 2019. I mean, heck, I have my phone right here behind me, my iPad in front of me, and a lot of your assignments, obviously, because it's a hybrid course, all of your assignments will be online, and we'll have to use the technology to gain access to this information and learning opportunities. So make sure that we're good there. Civic responsibility. We have to engage in the community through activities affecting positive change in society and the environment. And that's not just society overall and environment overall. It also has to do with our society and our environment. Yes, overall, but also like what we do. So we need to be effective and understand our civic responsibilities. So read a little bit more there. Global awareness. Students display sensitivity to cultures across local, national, and global communities. I have flown patients all over the world. As a flight paramedic, I've flown for companies that have sent me to different places like Mexico and Europe to go retrieve patients and bring them back. So you have to be able to, you can't just walk in and be a jerk American and expect to get to tap into the resources that they have or even the knowledge or information that they have. They don't have to help you. And so we have to be, have a global awareness. And so those 5 things are very, very important to the program. All right, syllabus modification statement. So read this statement. Ultimately, what this goes in to say is there's times that as an educator, we might have to change the syllabus. Might have to change a date or maybe add or remove a assignment or change something up because we're identifying that there's a lack of there's a deficit somewhere in the us sending the education information. So we have the right to do that. We will have to give you that in writing, and we will, and there'll be like a big explanation or at least a big email that explains a lot of that, and that'll be clear and upfront. Institutional statement. Each student is responsible for being aware of the information contained in the OSU OKC catalog, student handbook, and information listed in the class schedule. So these are the things that you need to be making sure I don't know why that's just erasing on me. So anyway, these things here, you need to make sure that you're good with that. Oh, now it stays. So make sure you're good with those documents. Very, very important. I mean, there's a lot. I know you guys are going to be inundated with a lot of information. Refer back here. Ask one of us. I probably won't know all the answers because I'm so new at OSU OKC, but there's a lot of people here that do know. So we'll tap into those resources. The global education mission. So global education mission is an institutional commitment to providing learning environments that provides a cross-cultural global perspective through all facets of educational process. Read a little bit more about that. What we're talking about is we don't want to just train you to be here in Oklahoma. We're training you to be worldwide. All right. OSU OKC syllabus supplement document. So this includes references to stuff like Americans with Disabilities Association policy, non-discrimination policy, and other relevant course policy information. So, look this up if you have something that we need to take a peek at. Section 2, program and course policies and information. So again, another string of policies that are really integral that are going to matter a lot to you. And this is where we also get into grades and that kind of thing. So the course description here. This course will prepare you, the paramedic student, with general assessment, a deeper understanding of the physiology and, pathophysiology, my favorite, as well as an introduction to advanced airway management. It's not going to be intubating. We're going to knock the heck out of basic airway and ventilation. And I can't tell how many times people have died because that wasn't taken care of. It's unbelievably important to do the basics. Otherwise, the advanced stuff doesn't work. And we'll hit that heavily, I promise. It's good stuff. We'll also get all the basic intro stuff that we need to really be talking about. the medical, legal, illness and injury prevention, ethics, therapeutic communication, a lot of basic topics. Might seem mundane, but get in there and let's make sure that we understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. As we get more and more into this, like into your program, you'll need to build off what we've done so far. All right, course outcomes. This course will prepare graduates to respond safely to any emergency possible, to function effectively on an emergency ambulance and emergency first response unit. To be able to do that, there's a handful of things that we need to make sure that we've done. First off, the student will demonstrate understanding of the profession of emergency medical services and paramedicine. You know, I didn't talk about paramedicine yet. Paramedicine is not just an occupation. Paramedicine is the study that encompasses everything around responding to an emergency, whether it's trauma or medical, and being able to reach your patient safely, to assess the patient, to render care, to reassess, to transport, to reassess, to treat, and get them there safely and hand off that patient to an appropriate facility via effective communication. All that has to be done. That's the and it even goes beyond that, because we also have to be good stewards of the profession. All right, so paramedicine is a very, very big deal. So in that end, we need to make sure that we discuss the development of EMS systems, roles, responsibilities, discuss wellness and injury prevention as it relates to what we do, the medical, legal, and ethical factors that go into it, and make sure we're doing things correctly, legally, document everything appropriately. Number two, the student will demonstrate foundational understanding of the pathophysiology as it relates to emergency medical services and paramedicine. We need to be able to talk about the cellular function and cellular environment. Excuse me. We're going to be given medicines. Those medicines get into cells. And so we need to understand how medicines act and what they do. And to understand that, we have to have a good understanding of the basic cellular function. Acid and base balance, very important, because a lot of times we'll be given medicines and it has a lot to do with their acid-base balance. Us breathing for a patient a certain way will help get that acid-base balance balanced. Talk about genetic and familial diseases, hypoperfusion, that's shock and low blood pressure. Not just low blood pressure, but hyperperfusion is the bigger picture of inability to deliver oxygen to the tissues. Discuss the contrast of inflammatory response and the immune response. Discuss the stress response. So pathophysiology is what happens when things go bad. And people don't call us when things are good. They call us when they're having a bad day, they're hurt, or they're sick. We need to show up and recognize how the body acts in an incorrect manner, in an abnormal manner, and then we need to deploy therapies to help support those abnormalities. And that's what we do as paramedics. Okay. And let's go to number 3. Demonstrate foundational understanding and sociocultural aspects of human encounters as it relates. So we need to be able to discuss therapeutic communications, both with our patient and other healthcare providers. We'll need to understand lifespan and development, because as people go through life, they will have different perspectives on different situations, and we need to be able to navigate around that safely from always safety for us, but also that we're not treading on the patient's how they feel about something in a dangerous manner and in an unkind or compassionate manner. The student will have foundational knowledge in the physical exam. Huge. Got to know what's going on with our patients. We have to be able to look at somebody, begin to gather data, pull that important parts of that data together, and then figure out what's going on with them. Then we treat, then we reassess, and then we start over. So that includes the 4 components of the physical exam: focus history of physical exam, detailed exam, matching the proper physical assessment with the patient's presentation or chief complaint, and then continue to do ongoing assessments, basically what we just mentioned. We need them to be able to understand advanced airway about endotracheal intubation and supraglottic airway management. So we will hit the heavy basics of airway and ventilation and then begin to touch onto endotracheal intubation, and then we'll send you to PC2 where you really do a lot of that. That's fun. All right, so there's a lot of teaching methods here. We will use lecture, guest lectures, discussion, audio visuals, handouts, assignments. So there'll be a whole lot, and a lot of this will be delivered to you guys in a hybrid format, so the online portion. But there's a lot of different methods. If one works, well, great, let us know. If one doesn't, let us know. I mean, we want to make sure that we are employing the right techniques to deliver the education, you receive the education, ultimately so that you become a good paramedic and move on to the next levels, and then, of course, become a good paramedic. Attendance policy is pretty important. So you must be here 80% of the time. There's not a lot we can do. If you're not here 80%, you cannot pass. It's just unfortunate. But you need to be in class. And things happen. Okay, so if something happens, email me and let me know. There's always something that we're going to try to do to help make sure that we can take care of it. But if you're here less than 80% of the time, there's nothing we can do. So not for that particular semester. Now we could plan on you returning and that kind of thing, but if you miss more than 80%, then you will be out of the program. For clinical rotations, you have to be there 100% of the time, which just makes sense because you have to get your clinicals, right? Failure to attend at least 80% of all clinical or all scheduled paramedic course class will result in administrative withdrawal, so we'll pull you out, and a grade of F. So if we know we're going to miss more than 80, then we simply try to get you out earlier so that you don't get an F and figure stuff out. But let us know. We're a resource for you. Let us be that resource. Uniform policy, professionalism, as we've already mentioned, is incredibly important. With that comes, we work in a field where we wear uniforms. So we're going to look the part and be professional, present ourselves so that if we look professional, we show up, then people aren't already considering us, an issue or a problem. So all students should wear their uniform while in class or lab. That's pretty important. Uniforms should consist of proper black boots, and I'll let you read that piece. Make sure that we are in the uniform, and here's the policy for that. All the different things associated with the uniform. The cost of the uniform is not covered in the normal student fee, so you'll have to purchase that. We try to take care of much of the tuition as possible, but not everything's covered. This is just part of it. You can't be a paramedic without practicing. We can't test you and assess if you're ready to go to the next level if you don't go to clinicals and test what you've learned. So the clinical requirements is a very, very strong component with this course. So you'll spend a lot of time there. You'll have to get on FSDAP. FSDAP is essentially a service that we track a lot of your skills and your clinicals and what you do when you're trying to show us that you know how to do these skills. This is the whole psychomotor part. This is where all that information goes into FSDAP. The fees for that is about $195. Also, not included. You'll have to pay that and log on, but it's required, so you will have to do that. So FSDAP is important when we start talking about psychomotor and skills, because basically to pass a program, you have to have a portfolio of all the stuff that you've done. This is the electronic version of that portfolio. Clinical sites are all over. You'll have to log on to My Clinical Exchange, which also comes with a fee. And we'll have to have that so that, again, the My Clinical Exchange helps get people to the right spot and helps us coordinate. It's a lot of effort to be able to get people to a clinical. So important that we hook up with that. So that you have the resource to get you to your clinical, for the instructors and the program to get you to your clinical. And again, very important, and you'll have to be online there. Excuse me. Skills testing. These will be completed during the scheduled classroom labs. For us, we'll have 5 5 labs. And I'm sorry, this is tape from practice earlier today, so I should have taken that off. I apologize. Well, 5 lab sessions, and those 5 lab sessions will personally be there and help go through the various whatever's on the lab for that day. And so we will interact, and you'll have to be there for those 5 lab days, because that's where your skills performance is evaluated. And we'd make sure that, again, what you're learning, you can take from here to here, right, where you can actually do the job. We also are going to take written exams. So the skills testing, that's your psychomotor piece. The written exams is the cognitive piece, right? We need to make sure that you understand all the information we've been giving you and all the information you've been trying to navigate around. Some written exams can be taken, or all of our exams will be taken in the testing center. What you'll have to do in this first week is email me and let me know what testing center you're going to be taking your tests at. Because I have to fill out a form for each of you and basically say, okay, at this time, when we say like the test is going to be open for these 5 days, then I have to send a form that basically says, Joe Schmo is going to be at the OSU OKC Testing Center from these 5 days. He can come anytime and take the exam. If you're in one of the other, if you're in Tulsa, or if you're in any other places where they have testing centers, OSU OKC is paid for. It's paid for you. If you go somewhere else, you might be subject to a fee, and you might have to schedule it a day or two in advance. You might have to schedule it a day or two in advance. So the piece there is make sure this is a schedule. This is part of your accountability of making sure that you are, when you're for your exams, if you're going to take it away from OSU OKC, that you schedule it in advance. And this first week, you need to email me and let me know, and I'll send an email out, so you'll just respond to it. But I want to know where you want to take your exam, and you pick one. If you're going to take it at Tulsa, you don't get to take it at Tulsa once and OSU OKC, and then and somewhere else. Pick one spot and stick with it. If something comes up and something weird happens, then we might be able to do 1 or 2 times if something happens, but don't do that. Pick one and let's stick with it. If extenuating circumstances happen, then we'll handle it as it comes. But pick one and be done. So ultimately, you'll have those 4 or 5 days to complete. You'll have to make sure that if you go to another testing center, that you set up with them. And again, you need to do it 1 or 2 days in advance. You'll also have an analysis paper. Your paper is basically a paper due at the end of the semester, and you can read all of the specifics here, and we'll have another video where we get into all of that on what needs to be done. It's basically a 3-page paper in APA format that gets into, you'll have to pick a topic and email me, and I'll have to prove it. Again, more emails and more notifications will come out as time goes on. You can also, if you pull this syllabus up at the very end, it'll tell you the dates that things are needed, and you'll be able to see that there. Okay, skills proficiency verification schedule. So these are essentially our skill stations that we'll have: patient assessment, airway control, various skills, and then ECG monitoring. And these will be mixed around in 4 different ways, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we'll have, on top of that, an extra lab day in the case that anything needs to be made up. Okay, email and message application requirement. We will use a app called Remind. It is mandated. You have to get this Remind app on your phone so that we can communicate. That's the way that we text, and it be appropriate. I mean, there's rules out there because people break rules and get in trouble. I personally don't do text students because I keep away from all that to keep you safe, keep me safe. If we're going to do instant messaging, then we need to do it through this app. And so you'll have to get this app as part of it, because that's going to be our main source of communication. Remind first, then email me, and then phone call. So if you hit a Remind app and I don't respond within 24 hours, then you can email me. If I don't respond within 48 hours, then you can call me. So, and also when I say don't call me, if there's an emergency, I'm talking about this is basic school related, education related question of the content or little small things. If you have an emergency, call me. Call me, email me, do all three. If there's an emergency, if something that is important, but an emergency isn't like I don't know how to do APA when you have an hour left before it's due. That's different. So we'll send out an email about how to get the reminder app set up. And so there's the policy, of course, that explains that. Grading scale and points. So a lot of stuff happening in this class, and it's your first class, so you're not going to be used to all this. It's a lot of moving parts. Here's how it breaks down. We use a very simple grading scale. 90 to 100 is an A, 80 to 89 is a B, 70 to 79 is a C. We do not have D's in this class. If you score under the level of a C, then you're going to receive an F. It's just the way that it works. This is for the entire school, but we don't give D's. If you cannot maintain a C or better, then you're going to receive an F. So make sure if you have an issue, reach out to us. You're going to hear me say this a bunch. I'm a resource for you. Use me. Call me. If there's an emergency, email me. Get on the Remind app for the first, always the first time. I'm pretty quick on the Remind app. You'll have 4 modular exams. Then you'll have homework, and I believe the homework is 10 different ones. 3 quizzes, 50 points each. My Brady Lab, which is your textbook, has basically its own online environment with all of its own little stuff. And you got to do that before the week of that content. So let's say this is week 1. Okay. Week 1 is all just going over this basic stuff. Okay. But in week 1, you need to do the readings for week 2, because on this Sunday, or on this, better to say, here is the end of, this is like end of Sunday, and here's week 2 starts. Before you get to week 2, you'll have to have all the reading, all the assignments done, so that you can so that when we get into the lecture pieces, you're going through that you understand it, and now you can actually think about intelligent questions to pitch forward. And again, that's where if you don't meet those timelines, then you only have 5 days to get it made up. Otherwise, you get a 0 for it. There'll be information later on how to actually get into all that. Discussion posts, you have to do discussion posts. Of course, there's a final, the analysis paper we talked about, the final practical exam. You'll have to turn in all your competency reports, and that's on your FISDAP stuff and the things from lab. And then, of course, your effective grade. If you're a jerk to me, to other students in lab, or then I'm going to approach you and say, hey, there's a better way to do this, because we're trying to maintain a professionalism. And if you continue to stay in just a really bad attitude, and you don't carry yourself with respect to others, then your effective grade will suffer. So all this adds up to 2,495 points, and you have to get 70% of those points to pass. So again, here's the effective grading we just talked about. All students will receive a minimum of 2 effective grade evaluations during the semester, one at the midpoint of the semester and one at the end. Anytime during the semester, they may receive additional evaluations based on positive or negative instances. Any negative evaluation, which is 3 out of 5 on the eval, will result in points lost based on the rubric below. So the rubric is how educators try to keep a subjective thing objective. So we put rules on how we grade you, and that's what a rubric is, just rules on how to grade. So you could go through that and look. Here is the program presentation grading rubric. So again, these are some things that we will grade you on. Just as an example, demonstrated good use of the material, critical thinking skills, organized introduction, clear introduction, content and conclusion. So these are things we're going to be grading you on as we go forward. Okay, with testing and retesting, here's this policy, so make sure you understand this. Retesting and reevaluation of the written and skills objectives will be available, but only as a privilege to be granted when the student's criteria have met this. So if you want to get retested, you have to meet these criteria. Each exam is a cut score of 70%. So if you don't score 70, you can retake the exam one more time, which is a second time. The retakes and missed exam dates must be taken in a proctor testing center that's granted for all tests. And we're gonna if you fail a test, I'm gonna give you a remediation assignment. Right? You'll have to finish that remediation assignment and then schedule your next test. The comprehensive final must be passed with a 70. You will be allowed to take the final one more time. Every time you take a test, if you retake a test, you can only at that point score a 70, is the highest score you possibly can make. Even if you score 99 on the actual test, we're only going to grade you as a 70. And that's just for fairness to other students who might have done well the first time. So hopefully that makes sense. If you get a 30 the first time because you didn't study and you went back and studied, got a 99, well, there's people who studied on the front end on the first time who did well, maybe an 80. Well, if we kept your 99, then that would put them in a lower level than because you saw the test before. So again, if you take a test a second time, then you're only going to get a 70 even if you make a 90. We're going to give you a score of a 70. Should you miss the deadline for the A form, and A form and B form are ways to say the first test and the second test, right? So A form is the first one. Whatever grade you could get on that. If it's not passing, you could take it a second time, which is the B form. And that B form, you're only going to get a score of 70 no matter what you get, unless you fail, in which case you would get that particular grade. Again, we kind of mentioned that. You will take these. You will have at least 4 business days to take these tests in a proctor testing center. Again, we talked about doing picking the testing center you want to use, pick one, and get it to me, and I'll get all those set up. Should you miss the deadline for the A form, you'll only be allowed a score of 70 on the subsequent exam. That kind of makes sense. That's the overalls. If you don't take the first one, or if you fail the first one, you can take the B form, but you can still never get over 70. Okay, academic dishonesty. Do not, I don't play around with this. Do not let me catch you being academically dishonest. If you turn something in, and there's programs out there for instructors, I can copy, paste, and figure out if you rip that off the internet. Please don't put me in a position to be a jerk, because I'm a pretty nice guy. But if you make me be a jerk, I'll do it, especially when it comes to academic dishonesty. Too many people out there trying to do the right thing, and if I catch any of you doing something wrong that's academically dishonest, 0 tolerance. You're out. I will call Mr. Justin Hunter, and we'll get you out of there. Here's the policy for that. Make sure you understand and read this policy and understand it, because it spells everything out. Like I said earlier, I have prosthetics. I'm a bilateral amputee. One great thing in a lot of really, really good institutions, with OSU OKC being one of them, the whole Oklahoma State system, Oklahoma State University system appreciates this. Special accommodations. We can make special accommodations, but you got to tell me, and we got to get that ball rolling in certain capacities. What does that mean? If anybody with any disability, we can make accommodations for. We cannot discriminate you based on a disability. There can be no accommodation during screening, evaluation, course examinations that will compromise or fundamentally alter the evaluation of those skills. So this kind of says that we will make everything we can, but if you're born without hands, then you can't intubate, and that could be a problem, right? So some things we can't bend on. We will bend as much as we can. Some things you can't. And those decisions we made, program director level and people at the university whose job it is to make sure that we're doing the right thing for you. We have to be transparent as could be here as far as instructors, is to make sure that we are doing the right thing for you at all times. And people are looking at us, asking us, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do that? And so we have to do a good job of making sure you have everything you need, all the resources to be successful in this program. If the following if the following are accommodations that are not allowed in the EMS program. So this is basically what this says, just spelled out in 4. So read those and make sure you have any questions. Of course, reach out. Here is our effective evaluation. We do integrity, empathy, self-motivation, appearance, self-confidence. I mean, you can read all that and go over it. This is how we say, you know, are they competent at this or not competent? And then at the back of this form, we explain any that are not competent yet, and we have to give specific examples. We sign it, then you have an opportunity to write on it. So again, this is midterm and end of the semester. We have to do these. You'll sign it, I'll sign it, and we'll push it forward. If something is, if we need to do something, we'll start working on how to figure out how to get you more competent. I'm backing up a bit, more competent in any of these domains. Okay. All right, here's your clinical packet. Really, really important piece here. Clinical attendance policy for emergency medical services. The clinical rotations enable the student an opportunity to actually use hands-on and do the information. Here's what you need to know before doing these clinicals, okay? 1, each student signs up for a clinical rotation. You must attend that clinical, except in the case of, something catastrophic. It can't be something simple as far as like, hey, you know, I don't feel so well today, I can't go in. You've got to be on your death. We have to go like knock on your door and figure out like why you're not going to the clinical. It's got to be a true emergency. And then extenuating circumstances will be considered on an individual basis. A medical statement or release may be requested. If you say that you're sick, you might need to prove it. Again, don't show up to a clinical if you have the flu. If you can't get off the toilet because you're having diarrhea or something, simply at that point, it just makes sure that you can document it, right? That you have medical professionals agreeing that yes, it would make sense not to go. If a clinical is missed, the clinical hours must be made up. The student is responsible for rescheduling these clinical with a clinical coordinator. The clinical time and location will be assigned by the clinical coordinator based on availability, meaning if you skip one and something's not available, you might not finish the class because there's nothing available. So important to keep it once you got it scheduled. No call, no show to any clinical rotation will incredibly affect your affect evaluation and may result in a failing grade. Any students who wish to do clinical rotations with Norman Regional Health System must meet their specific clinical guidelines if you go there. So it'll have to be something that you are paying attention to, or that you meet their guidelines. So if you're tardy, this really refers to lab for us because I won't see you guys except online. Tardy is defined as 10 minutes late after the assigned time. Being tardy 3 times in one semester equals 1 absence and must be made up. Being late 30 minutes will count as a full absence, and the student will not be allowed to participate in the clinical day, and clinical must be rescheduled. So if you're 10 minutes late, that counts as 1 of 3. If you get 3 of 3, then that counts as 1 full absence, and you'll have to redo one of those time periods. If you're late 30 minutes, we won't let you stay at the clinical day. So make sure that you give yourself ample time. This is the time to basically, if it's 30 minutes to get there, don't wait till 30 minutes. Maybe leave an hour, maybe leave an hour and 15 and get breakfast somewhere or coffee so that you're close, so that, something, if a train wreck happens or a massive, traffic jam, be there early, right? Important. Early departure from a clinical is considered a missed clinical. Okay, so make sure you're not doing that. Must be made up. Never, ever, ever leave a clinical early without notifying a preceptor. If something happens, don't just walk off, tell somebody, but you're not supposed to leave early unless, again, there's an extenuating circumstance or an emergency. So make sure that we abide by the attendance policy and the clinical all the clinical policies that are out there. your clinical rotations. So you'll need 76 hours of clinical time this semester. So we get that from your BLS EMS internship. You get it from emergency department, pediatric assessment at OU Children's ED Triage, OU Adult ED Triage, and Epworth Villa Geriatric Center. So a full spectrum of peds, adults, geriatrics, full spectrum of patient type, and obtaining those hours. While you're in clinical, here are the learning activities that are important. Schedule the required clinical shifts according to instructions given by the clinical instructor and presented in the clinical packet. That's what we're reading right now. Attend the scheduled shifts and participate in all assessments, in assessment of patients with your preceptor. So you'll have preceptor there going over all this stuff with you. Make sure that you're doing that so that they can see what you're doing and they can basically evaluate you. Upon correctly complete a clinical patient care report for so we have to do a chart on every patient we see. You have to document every patient you see. It has to be in FSDAP within 48 hours, otherwise it doesn't count. Okay, so make sure that you do that. This is why FSDAP is so important. Remember, this is the electronic portfolio where all of your clinical experiences are kept, so that when you're done, we can as an institution say, yeah, they did all this stuff, right? And we have proof of it. So very, very important. A component of this clinical rotation, the paramedic internship. This will require 180 hours of field time. Each student will need to find and seek out their own paramedic preceptor for an approved field site. And let's see, each preceptor must have documentation. So we have to have somebody that is trained, who's approved by us, to make sure that you accomplish that. An additional and final component of this course is the medical director gatekeeper shift. So ultimately, the gatekeepers, you sit with an MD for a shift, and they voir dire you, they go over questions, and you see patients with them, and you're assessing patients, and you're showing him then that you're basically getting their approval. Okay, so that's the gatekeeper shift. That's they hold the gate to let you into the next level. Each student must have their paramedic preceptor chosen and contract signed by the approved by all parties. This deadline date listed on the schedule at the end of the syllabus. 100% that student responsibility to secure this partnership. So there'll be more information coming out about this, but understand that this is a very integral, important part of the program. Policies relative to this is to remember safety and professionalism are your first priorities. At a minimum, you must wear gloves anytime you're working with a patient and use body substance isolation, BSI. Should you be injured or become ill while at a clinical site, first call your clinical instructor. If not, then immediately call the clinical coordinator. So it goes instructor, clinical coordinator, right? Chain of command. Remember, we are guests at each one of these facilities, so don't be a jerk. Be polite, be kind, be professional, and respect every bit of their space, because we're visitors. Always review and understand your clinical objectives for each assigned shift. You're not to be worried about any other objectives except the ones you're responsible for. So having prepared and gone through the objectives for what you're supposed to be doing, that clinical, is imperative, because that's the only things you need to be doing, nothing else. Exposure to potentially infectious fluid. Any student who has known substance exposure or potentially infected fluid during the performance of their academic or clinical responsibilities will follow the employee exposure policy. This will be available to us. And make sure that we follow the right policies and procedures anytime we get a finger stick or we get blood with with anything in our eyes, any type of, it doesn't matter what's in the blood, or any body fluid. If somebody's body fluid touches your body fluid, we got to report that. Employee exposure policy is how we know what to do. If there's inclement weather, if the OSU OKC campus is open, then all clinicals are assumed to remain as scheduled. However, if the OSU OKC campus is closed, then all future clinicals will be canceled in that time period. In the event that the student is already there, they may have to stay at the clinical site until their regularly scheduled end of shift arrives. So if you show up there and then everything closes, you might as well stay. If the campus closes, then you won't have to go to that clinical, and people will be contacting you. Uniform policy. Several days a semester where you will business casual or business attire. These dates will be determined later. All uniform policies are subject to the policies of the clinical or field site. So if we go to do intubation in the OR and they say you have to wear scrubs, then we'll wear scrubs. Otherwise, we'll wear our particular clinical uniform. So we're expected to be in uniform when you arrive at the clinical facility. You'll have different clinical uniforms while in the program, again, depending on where you are and what's going on. Here is the policy relative to that. So make sure you understand these things. You must have a clean-cut appearance. All clothing must be wrinkle-free and stain-free. Men must be clean-shaven, so they don't have facial hair that dips below the lip line. All earrings must be removed or placed with a form of a stud earring. All those with long hair must have it tied up in some format so the hair cannot hang in front of their face. You are an EMS professional and must look the part. Specific uniform policies follow. So look over this specific uniform policy there. Let's get over here to the cold weather policy. So for clinical shifts, students must wear the required scrubs or white button-up shirt. They may also wear a long sleeve undershirt that must be plain black or plain white. So if you're wearing something warm, it's got to be all black or all white. Jackets and sweatshirts must be removed once they get to the clinical site. And not if it's cold, you walk into the ER and you got your jacket on, you go to the room where you're going to put your stuff down, take all that off, and now you're in your clinical gear. For EMS shift students must wear their required EMT pants and white button-up. So continue to read. It's pretty self-explanatory there. So when we were talking about the gatekeeper and the paramedic preceptor, that comes towards the end here. For this semester, we have, like we said, for this semester for us, these are the clinicals that you'll be undertaking. Next semester, you'll see P2, P3 for the third semester, and P4, where you have that gatekeeper. And when you start doing more field internships as a paramedic, you'll have your paramedic preceptor that you'll have to identify, find. They'll have to be approved by us and that kind of thing. Total hours, 572 clinical hours is what we needed to be eligible to complete the program. When we talk about skills, we talk about a clinical competency. You're competent at this skill. So that's the words that we use as educators, clinical competency. You will need, for medication administration, you will need a total of 15. Not this semester, but the P2, P3, P4, you will have those. And so on and so forth. So here's all the things that we have to be able to do. And so you can look into that and figure out what it'll take in that capacity. And now we're going to get into section 3, which we're actually not going to get into because that'll be specific to your class, your specific one. But just to show you, this is where we get into you have to. This is like essentially your week to week breakdown. So what you can see here is section 3. I said we're not going to get into it. We're just going to cover it real quickly because you can look at all this as we go through. Notes as we get into this third section, you must read each chapter prior to reviewing the lecture. So again, if we look here, you can see that right here you have volume 1, chapter 1 and 2 and 3. That is the reading for week 2, but it has to be done week 3, and you have to complete My Brady Lab. You have to complete all this stuff Okay, so let me back up. Week 1 and week 2 are a little different. Here, you're getting all the stuff. Week 1. Week 2 is when you're actually going to be reading. So week 1, you actually need to be reading volume 1, chapter 1 for this information, right? You need to be reading it in week 1, because when you get to week 2, you need to have all that done so that this lecture means something. So if we go to the next one, here we have week 3. You're going to go over workforce, research, public health, medical, legal. You have to have all of that done before 9/1, so that on 9/2, when we start this information, you're ready to go. Okay, so that's kind of what that first thing says. You must read each chapter prior to review and do all the content before that week's lectures. So discussions in My Brady Lab will open Sunday morning and close Saturday night of the week they are due, right? So again, week 3's content will open the week before, and you'll have to do all that content before week 3 begins. You'll have 4 days to take each exam in your testing center at least. Exams are due by the closing time of the testing center. And as we go through here, you'll see, here's your exam. I tell you when it's open. Exam 1 is open between 9:17 and 9:21. So in that time, you'll have to take the exam. Quizzes can be completed anywhere on any wherever you are, taking your quizzes, and that's so it doesn't matter. But the exams have to be done in a testing center. Review the objectives below each week, which shows the specifics of what you need to learn. Ask questions. Use all different resources we have available. Again, the Remind app, email as a second resort. Call me if there's an issue there. I'm also going to have basically a frequently asked questions discussion page where it's not mandatory, not graded. But if you ask a question that might be important to the other students in the class or other classes, then ask the question there. I'll post it. You can come through and start looking through threads to see if there's something on there that somebody's asked that can help you learn a particular thing or clear something up. And then that's it. So as we go through Module 1, look at Week 1, Week 2, Week 3. If you have questions, reach out to me. Again, I'm really glad to have you guys. I'm excited to be a part of OSU OKC. I've been doing this a long time, and I'm excited to usher you guys in. So if you have any questions, let me know. Sorry this was so long, but it's a lot of information. Take notes, or if you have any questions, reach out. But otherwise, let's get started.